Have you ever finished something but not been happy with the result?
I mean, yeah.
Of course you have,
Like
right?
story of my life.
Yeah. And that's why today we're going to talk about why you should quit trying to do things right the first time.
But my mama said to always try to do it.
I don't care what your mama said. We're going to talk about the right way.
Roll the intro. Welcome to the Let's Quit podcast.
Quitting is not always a bad thing.
If you have the right mindset, quitting can be the most powerful tool you have on your journey to success. It's certainly been helpful for us.
Whether it's flying through hurricanes, building our businesses, or just trying to get to bed on time, we're always trying to level up and improve our lives.
This is the show where we share the lessons, experiences, and friends that have helped us live this incredible life. So let's quit the bad and grow the good together. All right, welcome back. First off, we'd like to thank our new listeners. If you're new to the show, thanks so much for listening. This is only our third one, so please judge accordingly. First 10 pancakes are always bad. But anyway, yeah, we're super excited to have you guys back and to do this for round 3. The podcast is just taking off way better than we both expected. So.
Yes.
Anyway, we're having fun doing it, and we're glad that you're having fun listening. So thanks for joining us again for another half hour or so until we can learn to talk better.
Yes.
We want to do a longer show. Like every time we hit stop recording, I'm like, oh, it's only 30 minutes. Like, I don't know.
We will get better. We are trying not to do it right the first time.
What a perfect segue.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So we're going to read this week's quote.
No, we're not, because remember we do story time first.
Oh,
so I'll have to come back to it.
Sorry.
So what have you been up to this week, Jennie?
Well, we built roughly 20 charcuterie boards in one day.
20?
Right? It was 20? Yeah. But I will say that sounds like super impressive, but I feel like the charcuterie boards are much easier to build than the cutting boards because it is like one plank of face grain. Granted, we have to like cut an entire handle into it and everything, but I don't know. I felt like it was a pretty successful day.
I thought it was a lot faster than the cutting boards just because so we had to build a little sled. For those that don't know, we have a furniture business. We're trying to start in the Houston area. One of the things that we're going to start selling first is cutting and charcuterie boards. Cutting boards, we built around 50 in 3 days the first go round. Now we tried to build 20 in one day of the charcuterie boards, and we had to build a little jig to cut the handle out right because we want to do it repeatedly. We want to continually, we want all of them to look the same. We don't want them all to be unique because that's hard to scale.
A fast process. This has to be like people know how to use this jig like the back of their hand, and it can just be one after another.
Right. So in woodworking, you got these little things called jigs, and you're going to put the board before the handle is cut out on it. You put it on this little thing, you clamp it down, and then you run that against the tool.
To cut out the shape.
Right, and that helps you cut out the same shape every single time with precision. So we had to build that whole contraption this week, which took quite a lot of time as far as most of our day was spent just building the little contraption.
But I will say, I feel like we came to the design very quickly. We had an idea in our heads of what we wanted it to be like. We knew how simple we wanted it to be. And then we watched a couple of YouTube videos of other people that had built templates for cutting out charcuterie board handles. And we're like, we like those, they're good. But there were some aspects that we didn't like. And so we came up with a fully organic idea. We haven't really seen this jig anywhere else.
Which is new for us. Most of us is most of our woodworking journeys have just been copying and pasting what everybody else has done.
Right, because we see it and we're like, hey, it works, let's do it.
Yeah, we've done very little in the way of experimentation for our own selves. So it was really cool to have our own idea and to try something that we've never seen done before.
And it worked really quickly. Despite the title of this podcast, we actually did it somewhat right the first time, which was kind of nice.
We'll get into this with the podcast, but the reason it was such a success was because we didn't have such a high standard.
Correct.
We were not trying to make the best version of this thing the first go round. We really lowered our standards, and it was really, if it could clamp a board down and sort of get us what we wanted, I would have been happy. We can refine it later, but that's later for the podcast. We're getting way ahead of ourselves.
Yes.
We built 20 charcuterie boards this week. That was fun. What else did we do?
We also sold a few cutting boards and charcuterie boards for the holidays.
Yes.
Which was fun. We weren't pushing super hard to get things sold for the holidays. We've been busy. We just got back to Houston after a whole bunch of Air Force training. And so
it was too much pressure.
Right. We didn't want to put too much pressure on ourselves. We didn't want to rush ourselves. And we didn't want to be super disappointed if we like missed the opportunity of the holidays. Like if we came in just a little bit too late and we didn't quite sell anything. So it was kind of a nice breath of fresh air and like a nice surprise that we had a few people come to us and say, hey, I want to use your cutting boards or your charcuterie boards for gifts for my mom and dad or my brother and sister. I think they'd like them. Can we have the link to buy them? And we're like, heck yeah. So it's kind of just a nice bonus without having to put a whole lot of pressure on ourselves.
Yeah, it's been really nice just to have some slow, organic, like sort of behind the scenes sales, because it sort of helps us with our procedure of like, hey, is our shipping station ready to go?
Right.
We're making little tweaks here and there with our processes that are going to help us in the long term. And it's nice to do that on 2 or 3 orders at a time instead of the hug of death that we're trying to expect
that's what
and
I was
build
just
for.
going to say.
So in business, there's a thing called the hug of death, where a lot of small businesses like absolutely crumble because they get too many orders. It's just 1 or 2 people working out of their basement or whatever, and they get 100 orders on Etsy or something like that, and they just can't keep up with demand. Then the product starts to fall apart, and they don't ever get any orders again, and they're stressed out, and they're mad, and they're angry.
Yes.
So that's what we're trying to avoid. That's the whole reason we're taking this business slow this go round, is because we want to build it right from the ground up and not be killed when we get an order for 200 cutting boards.
So that's super funny because I just watched a TikTok all about that. I was watching this TikTok video, and it was I think this younger girl that had started her own business out of her house, which is great. And she was sitting there with like her hand over her face, just like super overwhelmed and upset. And she had this little label maker printer. I don't know if you guys have seen those, but it's like a set little printer that only prints the like shipping labels. And oh man, that printer was just going. The paper was like over the desk and piling up on the floor, and she's just sitting there like, what am I going to do? Because it was like just her. I was like, oh my gosh, that's like the most perfect video form of the hug of death I think I've ever seen. So yes, it's been very nice to practice a lot of our processes while we're not overwhelmed.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've read the book E-Myth. Anybody that's trying to start a business or do anything like needs to read the E-Myth by Michael Gerber. It basically just talks about like so many business owners are crippled by too many orders right up front, and that's really scary to think about. If you're not prepared for it,
right.
we would be excited. Like, well, yeah, we'd be freaking out a little bit, but I feel like, I don't know, we'd be ready. We'd find a way to make it work, and we've been putting time into getting these procedures done, so that when we get a big order like that, we're just ready for it. We can double down and follow up and be ready to sell them even more stuff instead of just trying to tread water and fill the orders that we got. I don't know. I say all this till we get our first order of 100 boards. Then I might be eating my words. But I don't know. I'm the perpetual optimist. I'm
trying
always
to remain optimistic. Yes,
right.
Exactly.
But anyway, so I guess that leads me into the questions that I sort of like scribbled down 5 minutes before we started the show. Like, are you upset? Because, so for those that don't know, we built 100 like charcuterie boards last year, just trying to prototype to get ahead. Because before we decided to slow down and do things the right way, this time last year, we were trying to like sprint and get sales going as fast as possible, which I'm so glad we didn't do that. But like, do you feel like the 100 that we made, because we spent, I don't know, $400 or $500 on wood, like, do you feel like that was a waste now that we're completely redesigning and we're completely doing, and like every other board that we built now, we're throwing in the burn barrel because we just can't salvage it because we cut it down too much? Do you feel like a failure?
I feel like everybody listening is expecting me to right away say like, oh no, of course not, because I learned so much, because that, it's my podcast, it was my video. Like, of course, I don't want to sit here and say, yeah, I totally feel like a failure. But I'll be honest with you guys, because I feel like that's the point of this podcast. Kind of, it's half and half. Like, part of me does not feel like a failure because we did learn so much. We learned that we did not need to rush and sprint that quickly into making charcuterie boards. We learned that we did not need to make every single handle unique and like one of a kind. We did not need to, reject the idea of a template so quickly. And yeah, we kind of ended up wasting a lot of wood, because a lot of wood we could repurpose and we could use for the cherry and the maple, we could use for cutting boards. And some of them we were able to repurpose into our new charcuterie board design with the new handle, which is wonderful. I'll get to the good parts of it in a second. But yeah, a lot of it is a little wasted, and we're wasting money. That was wasted time to go pick up all that lumber that we're, now not using for anything that we're going to sell. So like, I'll be honest. Yeah, half of me does feel like a failure. But on the flip side, that's not bad to feel like a failure. Like I learned so much from screwing it up that I'm like, hey, yeah, in the future, I don't want to waste money on wood that I'm not using for projects to sell. So let's take a little time, like slow down, figure out how we want to do things so that we don't have to do that again.
Yeah, I feel like if you're new to like the growth mindset space, or like if you've been following a lot of like bigger, I don't know, like proponents of like improving your life and stuff like that on social media, you'll hear a lot of talk about reframing failure. I mean, that's step one, is like, don't look at your failures as failures. Look at them as learning opportunities. And I think that's great, but at a certain point, you can't. It's an important nuance. Like, so that's level one, is like reinterpret every failure as a learning opportunity. Okay, that's great. But there's another trap you can fall into. If you've been doing that for a while, you can fall into the trap of failure is like sidestepped. You can kind of squirm out of your failures because you're like, oh no, it's a learning opportunity. But you're also like, kind of like last week we were talking about, like you're skipping steps because you're trying not to own the failure. You're not taking responsibility for the fact that you failed. Yes, it's a learning opportunity,
but it should hurt a little bit.
But it should hurt a little bit. If you lose the fact that you're hurt that it didn't work out, like that, there goes your motivation to grow and improve and move forward. So I feel like there's an important nuance to failure, in that, yes, you need to tell yourself that you failed, but you need to be okay about it. You need to have that voice in your head. You need to do a little bit of self-soothing, but like not too much that you're avoiding failure.
Right.
Because we'll get into this in the podcast today, but like, avoiding failure is part of the problem with our culture, of like why it's so hard to improve your life and do things in this culture, is because we've been taught that all failure is bad and should be sidestepped. You need to own it. You need to feel bad about it, but you don't need to go down a death spiral. You just need to learn from it. Yeah. And it's an important nuance, I think, because
it's like, feel it and move on,
Right. And getting the process of feeling it and moving on, that's what needs to be taught. You don't need to be taught to avoid failure.
You need to be taught how to process your failure.
And you don't need to be taught how to sidestep your failure. You need to be taught how to engage with it fully and pull your lessons out of it the other way. So anyway, we'll get into that here in a minute. But yeah, I wanted to ask, like, do you feel bad? Because we built those 100 charcuterie boards, and then we prototyped 3 different handle styles. Yep. And then the version now that we're running with isn't even one of those handle styles. So we've we've failed 2 times with these charcuterie boards. Not to mention all the theoretical failures we've had of like just tossing ideas around. So I just wanted to get your opinion on like if you felt like a failure, or like how much of that failure you were letting in this situation, because we've gone through 3 processes now and we haven't sold a single one of these charcuterie boards. Have we? Have we sold any of them? We've given some as gifts and they've been appreciated, but I don't think we've sold any of these charcuterie boards.
I think it's a combination of we haven't sold any of them, and we haven't really been pushing them quite yet, because we kind of knew we weren't at the point yet where we could reach out to realtors and like be like a sustainable supplier of these boards. Like we'd have to leave for Air Force training, and then all of a sudden they're like, hey, well, what the heck? I wanted 20 more boards. So we were just kind of honest, like, hey, we can't sustain that kind of sales right now. So we're just going to keep them built, but set them to the side and start selling them later. But while we were waiting to sell them later, we realized issues with them.
Yeah, I guess we can just jump right into the title topic. We've kind of teased it a little bit already, but
let's just get to it.
Before we get to the title topic, though, you want to read the quote for the week?
Yes. Okay. So our quote for the week, if you guys don't know, we do a quote every single week on this podcast. Quotes are very, very important to us. And this one is by Bill Gates. Ooh. And it is: people overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And I feel like this quote just keeps popping up in our lives. Like, there are several times when Davis and I will just look at each other and be like, we're overestimating what we're going to do in this year. Like, I don't know. Do you feel that way? I feel like this quote keeps coming back and like popping into our lives.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like you know me, like I'm always trying to go full throttle all the time, never take breaks, never slow down. So I'm always biting off way more than I can chew. And then I crash 2 weeks after, like, sprinting at full speed. And, then it takes me a couple weeks to recover. And then by the time I wake up again and I'm ready to move forward, I've decided, we're going to change direction anyway.
New plan. And then I'm kind of the person that's like, I don't know, I think of myself as more of like a distance runner. I can sustain my energy for a little bit longer. Not too terribly much longer than Davis can, but I feel like my fuel burns for longer.
What are you talking about? You have to drink coffee every day at 2:00 because
I do
so
daily, but that's what I'm saying. Like distance over a long period of time. I feel like yes. Daily,
you do take more breaks than I do, and you slow down a little bit. So I guess that makes sense. But Jennie and I have 2:00 coffee because poor Jennie, she wakes up like ready to just bust through a brick wall every day, and she falls flat on her face at 2:00.
Yep, so I'm up at like 5:45, 6 a.m. I'm like, okay, let's get my workout in. Let's make coffee. We're gonna get started on writing some blogs early. I don't know half the stuff I do in the morning. I'm just so ready to go. And then 2:00 hits. I'm like, I am exhausted. So I make myself coffee at 2:00.
And I've got I kind of crescendo throughout the day. I wake up, I'm kind of slow to get up. I drink my coffee, I check, all the social media stuff, see what we need to respond to for the day. And then we start our little planning meeting. And by that time, you've already had a workout in, drank 3 cups of coffee, done the laundry, you're ready to go. And I'm just slowly getting energy throughout the day.
And I'm like, okay, are we going to go or are we going to take a break? What's happening right now?
And then right about 2:00 in the afternoon, I'm at peak performance. I'm ready to run through a brick wall at 2 in the afternoon. And you're ready to die. So it's this great opposite schedule sort of thing. So anyway, it's just fun to manage, especially working with your spouse. It's so much fun. I don't know. I know a lot of spouses that would not say that, but
it's not always fun in the beginning when you're first figuring out that you have completely different schedules. But once you start to know each other's schedule and you can kind of work around it and I don't know. There's definitely benefits to being on opposite schedules for each other.
All right. So we're going to start out today's title topic with a story. A long time ago.
In a land far, far away.
No. We have other mentors. So we have business mentors that, we talk to all the time, and they've helped us out. They've been on the internet for a long time doing stuff. And we were at their house a couple of years ago in Portland. We were just starting a business, just starting the YouTube channel. Of course, they've been doing this for a long time. They've been, entrepreneurs for going on 20 years now.
Right, so they know the process. They know all the issues they've run into. They pretty much have them ironed out because, they've been through it so many times.
So we're at their house. We're just trying to, absorb as much as we can. Well, one of the things that they wanted to tackle was they're not huge DIYers, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so one of the things that they wanted to do was to put a screen door on where their office is. They've got a door out of their office that leads into the backyard, and they wanted a screen door on the back to get some fresh air on a nice day and stuff like that. So we go to Home Depot, we get the screen door and everything, and I'm helping them install it. They're kind of handy, but they're not DIY woodwork. That is not their content.
And we were there visiting, so we're like, hey, let's make ourselves useful. Thanks for letting us stay with you. What can we do to
so
help you?
we're tackling this screen door project, and we start to install it. I'm trying to read the directions. We're trying to put it up. We get the drill. We're pre-drilling the holes and everything. We're trying to hang the hinges up and everything, and then attach the door. And we find out that the concrete slab that goes the driveway or whatever,
at the base of the door. Yeah.
Right, the base. It's too high. It's not a standard door height. The concrete has elevated itself above the lower threshold of the door. So the screen door is way too tall.
And you can't just buy another door to fix that exact height.
Right, and you can only hang it in the door frame. You can't hang it above any. It's just, if you're thinking through it, the screen door was too big for the opening of the door, and you could sort of adjust the height of the screen door to go taller, but you couldn't adjust it to go shorter. There's a little skirt that goes on the bottom, and if you took the skirt off, the door was still too tall. Mm-hmm. So there really wasn't a way to get this screen door into this door frame. So I'm just thinking, all right, cool. Let's put the screen door back. Let's go back to Home Depot. Let's return it and see if we can get a shorter one. Well, all of a sudden, so it's another couple that we're staying with, and the guy grabs a hammer, flips the door upside down, and just starts wailing on the bottom of this screen door, bashing it in. It's made of aluminum or some cheap Chinesium metal. And he's just beating it with a hammer.
And so we're like, well, now we sure as heck can't return it.
Right. And so he's trying to get this screen door to be like a ½ inch shorter just so it can fit and like swing open over this like concrete lip or whatever. I'm just thinking like, this guy's crazy. Like, how in the world, why are you destroying this $100 screen door, like trying to get it hung? And then finally, like, I didn't even ask. I'm just like, patiently waiting because, it's his screen door. He can do whatever he wants with it. But like, I'm just sitting there thinking this guy's crazy for like bashing into this screen door. And then he looks up. And he's like, we need to take a break. I'm like, yeah, let's take a break. That sounds like a great idea.
Stop banging our screen doors with a hammer.
So we're like drinking a glass of water or something. I don't know. I'm trying to help. I'm trying to like lead him to the idea of like, let's go get a different screen door.
Lead him to your idea of what you think would be the best way.
Naturally.
Yes.
So we're talking, and I'm like, well, do you think that they sell like shorter screen doors at the Home Depot?
I'm just gonna drop that conversation bomb in there, see if anybody picks it up. I don't know.
Anyway, and he looks and he's like, no, the goal today is not to have a perfect screen door. The goal today is to get a screen door mounted to the door frame. He's like, I don't care if it's got gaps on it. I don't care if it doesn't work right. The goal today is to get a screen door hung in that doorway. And that completely like reframed the problem for me. Now, I still think it was a little ridiculous that we were like beating a screen door into the hole.
There was duct tape involved, I think.
Anyway, it was a nasty, but there's something to be said for doing things in an iterative way. That's one of the main personality differences between this guy and us, is because we are not iterative like people. We like to, consume and learn everything we can about something and then do it right the first time.
Yes, and come up with the best solution possible.
And here this guy is, like, he's okay with, like, wasting $100, like, just getting a screen door hung. But I guarantee you give us, just a couple of weeks to hang a screen door, his is going to be way better because he's willing to look stupid. He's willing to do it wrong so that he learns the right way to do it.
Yeah.
And some things, and you guys know this, like some things you can only learn by doing it and failing through it. Like push-ups. You can only learn how to get better at push-ups by doing push-ups.
Like, and you're just going to suck at the beginning.
Right. And so like here we are thinking that we can like learn how to do push-ups and get better without doing any of them.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's what started this whole discussion on like being an iterative learner instead of a like consume and then do it right the first time learner. And that really echoes with the quote that we picked out for this week. I think that those like are very like hand in hand. But when we started learning how to do things iteratively, I think that's been one of the best moves we've ever made in the business.
I would agree.
Right. And especially talking about these charcuterie boards, like I'm not beating myself up over building 100 boards the wrong way. Yeah, we failed. We totally failed. We didn't sell any of them. We probably couldn't have sold any of them for the price that we wanted because they were just ugly. I mean, that was it. They're just ugly.
Yeah, they weren't as nice, I guess, or pleasing to the eye as our new ones are. But
I don't think we would have landed on our design now had we not made 100 the wrong way the first time.
Right. Because we had to learn, like, no, we don't need unique handles. No, we don't need 3 different types of handles. We just need this one handle that is easily repeatable that people like. That's all we needed. Like, it was literally that simple. But we would have never figured that out on our own because we were too busy saying, like, what's the perfect one? What's the perfect one? What's the perfect charcuterie board?
Right. And I think the lesson there is, like, you should be focused on doing it right, not doing it right the first time.
Yes.
Be willing to look stupid the first 5 times because then you're going to own it so much better. You're going to be able to do it so much better than everybody else because you've been willing to fail and look stupid before. And now you're never going to make those same mistakes again. You're not going to make those same mistakes again.
So all that being said, we've just explained what we mean by not doing it right the first time. And now we kind of want to walk into a little of why you shouldn't want to do it right the first time. And then at the end, we'll give you some action steps because, of course, we love ending our podcast with like physical action steps that you can take. But as for like why you should not want to do it perfectly right the first time, like you've got to start somewhere. Like you
can't improve on something that you've never tried before. Mm-hmm.
Like you've got to start somewhere. Take the first step.
Yeah, like the push-ups. Like there's just some things that you aren't going to be able to learn how to do it. You're not going to be able to learn the right way until you've tried a few times.
Yep. And mess up a few times. Notice that you're not quite good enough, where you want to be and learning tips on how to get better.
Right. This is just like when we first started learning how to fly through hurricanes.
Yes, absolutely. Like we had no idea what we were doing. This was a brand new job. We've never really like worked on an airplane ever. So, I mean, it was kind of a learning curve for us. Like we didn't know what part of the storm you should fly through. There's a lot of really critical timing things, like knowing when you're at the exact center.
Guys, we're talking about like our first flight through, like literally my first flight with the unit was through a tropical storm. Like they throw you right in. And you're with an instructor. It's all safe. It's all like super supervised, but like super supervised.
Extra supervised.
Super supervised.
Yes.
Disclaimers and everything up front. But like, yeah, like they just throw you right in.
Yep.
Like instructors watching over your shoulder, but like they understand this process and they throw you right in.
And there is really no other choice for you than to kind of fail at it. Like you don't know what you're doing. You're getting thrown into it. You're overwhelmed. It's like a fire hose of information and you're just not going to do it right the first time. But the point is,
like, I don't even know how the software works, but yet you're trying to get me to find the center of a tropical storm. What?
Yes. So the point is to see that like it's very overwhelming and start noticing the things that are most important. So it's not that they want you to get in there and do the job perfectly. They just want you to realize like what the most important things are. One, like first and foremost, safety is most important. And two, like being an active member of the crew is important. Knowing exactly which software does what and what data we're pulling in from the airplane versus what data is like calculated in the software. Just little things like that. It's starting to prioritize things you see. Everything else, like, yeah, you're going to do wrong.
And our instructors did a great job of like just letting us squirm.
Yep.
They're just great. They've been doing this a long, long time, and they just know that the fastest way for somebody to learn is to just let them squirm in that chair, just like doing it wrong and like trying things and finding. Of course, they're not going to let anything, like they're not going to let a bad report leave the airplane and go to the National Hurricane Center, but like they just do a really good job of letting you try and fail, because then you're going to own it so much better. If they just told you in the classroom and then you went and did it, like you wouldn't own the answer, but because you screwed up 5 times and you made a mental note to yourself like to never screw up that way again, you're going to be so much better in the future by it. That
is probably the biggest thing I took away from it, is that I remembered each time I failed and I was like, wow, that did not feel good. That was kind of embarrassing. I mean, I just felt bad about it and I don't want to fail like that again. And so I never forgot that scenario. And then I studied it like extra hard and I didn't screw it up again. And I feel like if I had been allowed to do like every task or every scenario, every storm perfectly, if something went wrong while I was flying by myself, I wouldn't know how to fix it because every scenario previous to that had been like cookie cutter perfect.
And that's the punchline, is that not every situation in real life is cookie cutter perfect.
Barely any.
Especially in this job. Like there's software bugs, there's like random stuff that happens. Like
some of the technology we drop out of the plane to get data, like real-time data inside the storm.
They lose GPS signal. Yeah. Like
it happens.
Yeah. So you got to be able to operate when things aren't ideal. And if all you've ever done is simulations of perfect scenarios, you're not going to know what to do. So it's really cool to like build up that muscle of like doing things when it's not ideal and not perfect, but pushing through anyway.
Yes.
That's where you really learn the most. As uncomfortable as it is, like we're saying this on the other side, but in the moment, we were both hating it. This summer when we were going through training, we were both complaining to each other the whole time. But like now that we're done with it, we see the brilliance in that method of instruction.
Yeah. While you're in it, you're like, man, I was so stupid. I can't believe I did that. I missed that again. Like I feel so overwhelmed. I can't believe I didn't catch on to that. But now I feel like my confidence came from the times that I failed.
So moving on to the second thing, like if you're pursuing a worthy goal, you can't nor should you want to do it right the first time. Otherwise it's not that hard. Like if it's a really big goal and you really want to accomplish it and you really want to like put your identity into it, get emotionally invested in it, like it should be something hard. You don't want to put your stock in something that's easy.
And if it's easy, like somebody else is probably doing it too.
Right.
Like what keeps other people from doing it, not you.
Right. Especially if it's a goal that like nobody's ever done before. Nobody's ever done it before for a reason. Yeah. It's probably hard. There's probably a lot of things between you and accomplishing that goal. even if you don't see them just yet, like you shouldn't want your goals to be easy. I mean, go back and listen to the first podcast if all you have are easy goals, but it feels good to be able to say that.
Go back to our first podcast because we have an archive.
I know. But yeah, if you were able to pull it off the first time, it would have been done already. And that happens so infrequently. There's a great book I have here on the bookshelf called Loonshots. And a lot of it's just a bunch of stories about technology and advancements and like people who had crazy, insane goals and they achieved them. Half the people in the book could not sell the idea to whoever needed to use it. For example, like the one that's like sticking out in my mind right now is like radar. When the two guys discovered how to do radar, they were just trying to get like a radio signal back and forth between two ships. And what they realized was that when a ship like they were doing it across a river, and when the ship like crossed the river, they heard like a bunch of noise and stuff on their radios
because it intersected.
And it was a foggy day, and they realized it was a ship, and that's how they discovered radar. Well, they went to the Navy and they said, "Hey, we got this new technology. Like, are you interested?" And they're like, "Nah, we're good."
And now that's like primarily what
right, but like
people use.
The Navy said no to radar when it was first developed, and they just happened upon it. So like these need to be slow iterative processes, because sometimes if something just like falls right in your lap and you're not prepared for it, like the orders we were talking about earlier, like the girl on TikTok, if you hadn't put your reps in, if you haven't like built the process up and owned it completely by failing and failing and failing, you're not going to be able to handle it when it does work out right, when the Navy does want to buy it from you, when when 1,000 people on social media try to put in an order. You need to have failed a few times so that you know how to handle a big situation like that.
And I think it kind of freaks people out if it looks like it fell so perfectly into your lap, because they're like, "Really? Have you tested this?
This sounds too good to be true."
This sounds too good to be true. I don't know if I want to trust it. Have you really is there any troubleshooting being done on this?
Right. You see that a lot in Shark Tank. Like somebody will come in with a great product, great idea, but then like the sharks are like, "I don't like you as a person. I don't trust you. I don't like you've like," especially anybody that's had money. Like anybody that comes onto that show and their mommy and daddy gave them money to start the business. I say that disparagingly, but there's been a lot of great people that, started off with helpful parents. But the sharks will like completely throw somebody out of the room if they don't like the person. If things come too easily to that person, they don't want to invest in them. And conversely,
people respect hardship.
Conversely, there's people on Shark Tank that get $1 million deals. They have a crap idea, and the sharks will tell them, "I hate your idea, but I want you. I want to invest in you. So if you've got 3 or 4 other ideas, let's talk about those. I'm going to sign you to a deal, but we're going to chase an idea that works because you work. Your idea might not work right now." So you've got to put your reps into failing and doing it in an iterative process instead of trying to pull it off right the first time every single time.
Absolutely. And I think, unfortunately, this whole avoid failure, do it right the first time type mindset is kind of, I don't know, drilled into us more in school, or especially going through like academia. And I don't know, just look at tests. Like the professors will say, "Hey, study all of this material. All of it is super important. You're going to need it in the real world. Study. And then we're going to take one test, and it's going to determine if you pass or fail." So if you study and all of this stuff is important, and let's say you pass the test, yay, you got an A. And then what? Like you're done with the information. You move on to the next thing. What's motivating you to remember all of that so-called important information?
The final.
Yeah, the final that you take. And then what?
Right. Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. Like, yeah, you get an assignment, you learn everything about it in a sterile environment out of a textbook.
Yep.
And then you write a paper on it. You do 2 or 3 homework problems on it. And then it shows up on test day. And if it's not on the final again, you probably never use it. I know that's probably like 90% of all majors. Like even the STEM majors, like
us. Do you think I remember half the math stuff?
Do you think I'm doing differential equations on the airplane when I'm trying to find the center of a hurricane? No,
I'm sure as heck not using linear algebra. That's for sure.
No offense to our professors or anything. It's just that's the system. Is like one of the unintended consequences of our education system is that you teach people things in a rapid, sterile way, and then nothing ever sticks because you don't get enough reps to succeed or fail at it. And then you breed in this mentality. I mean, this is why Gen Z is like record highs of depression and hospitalizations for suicide, is because they're constantly being told to perform at such a high level of success, and they're not allowed to fail at any given time. And they're not even 18 yet. Like, it's no wonder they're having like trouble. So anyway, that's a whole other podcast. But like, we get taught from a very young age of like, do not fail, do not fail.
I don't know if it's necessarily like do not fail. I feel like it is just success the first time around, success on the first test.
And it's so nasty because I don't know, it just seems nasty sometimes that we're saying all the right things about like, oh, failure is important, like you need to fail, but then in our actions we're not following up on that.
Because I will say it was definitely a wake up call for me to like get into the job I'm in now in the training program and say like, nope, just fail. It's okay. That's built into our training program, is for you to screw up and learn from it. And then starting this business, like it benefited us so much to fail, and then finally land on something that was a successful idea. And not only is that just like inherently how the business world works, it's what people appreciate. It is what is wanted. I feel like to be a good business owner and entrepreneur, you have to embody that mindset. But man, it is like, you have to switch your mindset like a light switch coming off of, what you were grown up.
Because in life, you get do-overs.
Yeah.
You can do like extra credit. You can redo the assignment. You can get more time. You can get help from your neighbor teachers. You can get help from the student at the other desk. Like, it's a different game. We're teaching kids how to play football, and then real life, the scoring system is baseball. Just to like abuse another analogy, like we're teaching people to play the rules to one game and then throwing them out in the real world, and it's a completely different sport. Like there's no one. It's no wonder it's hard. Yeah. So anyway, we're not the philosophers of the 21st century, just like thinking we've got the solutions. Like, these are hard problems. Like,
I think it's just based off of our experiences too. We're not sitting here and trying to preach like, oh, the school system's so broken. That's not the point of this podcast. It's for us to talk about based on our experiences, growing up, working jobs, starting a business. Like, this is just what we have realized and seen.
So another downfall to trying to do it right the first time is you get into this game of perfectionism. In the game of like do it right the first time, you're not allowed to even try until you know it's successful.
Yes.
And that's where we see so many woodworkers like fall into, specifically because that's where our content is, but like we see so many woodworkers terrified to put something on Facebook Marketplace, terrified to try and sell it because they're constantly scared that it's not good enough. It's not good enough.
Because it's not ready yet. Yeah.
I'm not ready yet. Like, yeah, they don't have permission to sell it because it's not perfect. Guess what? It's never going to be perfect. And number two, like, you don't want it to be perfect. You want feedback from your customers to then improve it. If you think that you in your basement, in your shop, you can build the perfect cutting board without ever taking it to the kitchen, without ever sending it to 100 people to put through the dishwasher and to, remove the finish on it and to like hit it with different types of knives and everything, you're not going to be able to do everything yourself. And to think that you can sit in your basement and get the best cutting board ever that's ready for sales without ever selling it or having customers test it is crazy.
And I even think too is you're kind of cornering yourself if you automatically come out of the gate with like the most perfect product. Because think of even the big corporations like Apple, Nike. Every single year they have something new. It is bigger and better. They have improved. Now we have this Nike tennis shoe that has even more foam on the bottom, and it's a better percentage of rubber to foam, and it'll give you more bounce when you run. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, it's even better than the last pair I bought. I need it. Or the next iPhone. Now it has 3 cameras on it instead of 2.
What you're not also seeing are the outlet stores where Nike failed. Nike failed and a line of shoes just didn't work out. So they sent it all to the outlet store to be like discounted because people didn't like it. Like, these other big companies are iteratively testing these things in the public eye. But once they find what works, that's where you see the marketing dollars go. Yep. And that's where you see the paid sports endorsements and stuff like that, is on the products that do work. But you're also not seeing where Nike fails because you're not in the outlet store seeing how much product is just being churned through that didn't work. Right. So we talked a lot of theory. Let's get to some action steps.
Yeah.
That little sound lets you know that is an action step. That's new this week. We're going to try it out. So first thing, lower your expectations. When trying to do things right, not the first time. When trying to do things right, but not do them right the first time, you really need to lower your expectations. Kind of like with this little jig that we made for these charcuterie boards that we were building. Like, the goal was not to make the best charcuterie board handle jig in the entire world. I failed at that. It is not.
It's definitely not the best.
There's waves in it. The handle is a little bit crooked on it. Like it's a bad jig, and I knew it when I built it, but it was better than what I had before. And the next version that I make will be 10 times better. Now, I've also got to remake it again when we have employees, because employees are going to drop it. They're going to step on it. They're going to like use it wrong. We're going to have 3 or 4 more of these jigs before we get the final version. But right now I need a jig that works.
Yep.
So, number 1, lower your expectations, get a working prototype, and tell yourself it's a working prototype. That takes the pressure off of you making it perfect, and it also gives you the ability to improve it on the second go-round.
You're giving yourself permission to improve.
Right, so get a working prototype and then use the thing. That's our next point, is try it 10 times. When you get your first rough draft, go read the first chapter of your book to 10 people. Try it 10 times before
jumping ship or changing the channel.
And then that's step 3. Jennie, you want to hit that one?
Yeah, iterate. Do it again and again after you've tried it and said, hey, this either worked or did not work. Try it over again. Like, don't just stop, because when you like jump ship before you try to iterate, now you have to start this process all over again. So yes, you've jumped ship. Now you have to build something new and test it out again. And it's like, stick with one idea for long enough so that you can give it an honest shot. And one of the suggestions we have is to schedule a time to come back and try it again. Don't just say like, oh, yeah, I'll try it again later. Like, put it in your calendar to actually do again, because your brain's not going to want to do it again because you're kind of embarrassed and upset that you failed the first time.
Right. Make it objective. Put a number on it. Do 10 reps. Do it for 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Write 3 chapters of that book before you decide to change topics.
Yeah.
Again.
Don't let your brain like squirm out on you and not want to do this step because you're just disappointed that you didn't do it perfectly the first time.
That's perfect segue into the last one. You want to hit the last one?
Yeah. So another physical step similar to like scheduling a time to iterate is keep track of your progress, whether that's journaling, whether it's keeping a notebook, some graph paper, whatever. Your brain wipes your memory. That's just what we do, especially if it's a bad memory. If you like have failed at something or the first time you did it like didn't work, your brain's not going to like want to remember and record that. Like, that's such a bummer, So you make sure you write down, hey, when I built this jig the first time, I made one clamp way too tight and it threw off the entire jig and it screwed up 5 of my boards. So that when you go back to do it again, you can say, okay, I need to loosen that clamp because last time it cost me 5 boards. No big deal. I just know that this time around, I'm definitely not going to lose my 5 boards.
Right. If you're following the other steps, you're putting in 10 reps. So you might have 10 things wrong with it that you need to check on the last one. So you need to record your progress and journal and write these things down, because don't just iterate as soon as you find one problem. You might find 3 or 4 much faster than it would take you to reiterate again to find just another problem with the second design. So save some work for yourself, do some more reps, and keep a journal of it, and that will help you solve more problems at the same time. And that's even more efficient.
And then if we really want to get like big picture, you can look back at your journal throughout this whole process of iterating whatever you're making. For an example, we'll go with a jig. We're going to look back in our journal and see all of these iterations of this jig we made, and you're going to start to notice a pattern or a process in how you operate, how you come up with ideas, how you test, how you iterate. And then when you go to build the next thing, maybe it's not a jig, maybe it's a kitchen table, you're going to know, hey, typically when I start this process, I'm a little too fast on, deciding on a design. Ooh. And you can start to predict your own problems because you've documented the previous ones.
We did that exact thing with this podcast, to get super meta about it. Like, we took a year for this podcast to be launched. We spent so much time researching, hosting, and I didn't know anything about podcasts. I really enjoyed listening to them. I had no idea how to make one, how to
we'd
post
watch some YouTube channels of podcasts.
So I set the bar so low. I said, in 3 years, I'd like to start a podcast. This is about a year ago. I said, in 3 years, I'd like to start a podcast. And then I just started researching how to do it. We started talking to the We Built a Thing guys. We started just asking little questions here and there, bar super low. I am not trying to start a podcast. I'm just interested in what you're doing. And then we started researching equipment. I'm like, okay, I have a propensity to cheap out the first time I buy equipment, and so I'm going to do my research. Now, I know that I'm breaking a couple of my rules here by saying, iterate and start out the gate. But once you've iterated enough, you can start to learn things about yourself so that you can save a little bit of time when you're iterating. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I say all that to say we bought all this podcast equipment. It all worked the first time.
Which was just shock.
Because we used what we learned from iterative processes to level up. Now, we're still iterating this podcast. Like, we recorded, 5 to 10 episodes before we ever hit the record button. Like, we just pretended we were recording it. And so we're iterating the practice of talking through a podcast. We're not iterating our equipment. We can move forward. So we're still iterating, but there's some things that we can take a little bit of a shortcut because
we've dealt with it before. We've either failed at some aspect of it before and we know how to just not do it again.
Right. With the YouTube channel for the podcast. We started the YouTube channel for the podcast. We don't need to learn all over again how to do a YouTube channel because we've been putting in our reps on our main Jennie and Davis channel. So you're allowed to level up. It's just you don't need to stop iterating. You're going to learn so much more and you can build on that success. You don't have to iterate literally every single thing. You can start to stack your progress in certain areas. So that's extra level 10 super duper.
That's the extra credit action step, I guess.
Yeah. So once you start to get good at that, you can start to notice hey, I am pulling it off right the first time in some areas.
But it's not due to magic. It's because you put in the work.
Right. Then you're allowed to do it right the first time if it's something that you've put all your reps into and you're starting over again. So anyway, that's our show for this week.
Woo-hoo.
I don't know. I think this is a good one.
Yeah. This one, I feel like everybody struggles with. And I think I feel like it hits home because failure hurts so bad. And everybody can relate to the fact that it sucks to fail. Mm-hmm. And it's painful.
Yeah. So with all that painful talk, please write us a review for the podcast. If you like the show, if you're enjoying the show, we'd greatly appreciate a review on iTunes. Well, it's not iTunes anymore. There's a podcast app on a Mac. Anyway,
Apple Podcast.
We're still learning. It's an iterative process. Yes. We're still learning. We'd love for you to leave us a review on the podcast. We would love a 5-star rating, and then let us know what you like about the show. If you got beef with us, you don't like something, or you want to completely get rid of a segment, let's talk about that personally. You can send us an email at letsquitpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to talk through that with you. But yeah, thanks so much for listening. And Jennie, you want to tease next week's topic?
Yeah, so come back next week because we're going to be talking about how you should quit listening to your mom. I'm sorry, Mom.
But I like my mom.
I love you, Mom.
All right.
Okay, bye.